Hello everyone, my name is Enrique Nunez Benitez, and today I'll be presenting the research process and design decisions behind my infographic, focusing on communication genres in the actuarial field. As an actuarial science sophomore at UCF, this project gave me the opportunity to explore how actuaries communicate on a daily basis, something that isn't always emphasized when we talk about the profession. We usually think about math, statistics, and modeling, but actuaries rely heavily on communication to turn data into decisions. So in this presentation, I'll walk you through how I conducted my research, the challenges and strategies I experienced along the way, and how I transformed that information into a visually organized infographic. When I began my research, I framed a few guiding questions. First, what communication genres do actuaries use the most? Second, how do these genres fit into their everyday workflow? And finally, why are certain formats preferred over others? I wanted to look beyond just emails and reports, and instead understand why these formats matter. To do that, I searched for credible and field-specific sources that describe workplace communication. This step was especially important because I wanted my infographic to reflect authentic, professional communication, not assumptions. I ended up using three main sources. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics gave me a reliable overview of actuarial responsibilities and daily tasks. It helped me set the foundation. The Society of Actuaries Day in the Life article provided real examples of what actuaries do hour by hour, which helped me identify communication moments throughout the day. And the Pro Actuary blog gave me practical insight on communication skills, how actuaries simplify technical information, the role of clarity, and common communication mistakes. Together, these sources help me understand not just what actuaries communicate, but how and why those communication choices matter. Throughout this process, I faced several challenges. One major challenge was that communication is rarely discussed explicitly in actual sources. Most articles focus on exams, technical skills, or job duties, but they don't break down communication in detail. Another challenge was that data about communication time wasn't always consistent. Different sources gave me different estimates, so I had to interpret the information and find patterns rather than rely on a single number. I also struggled with turning complex concepts, like actuarial reporting, into simple visuals. Reports contain a lot of detail, so representing them with just a short description and an icon required careful decision making. And finally, deciding what to include and what to leave out was difficult, because the infographic needed to stay clear and uncluttered. To overcome these challenges, I used several strategies. I prioritized the four communication genres that appeared the most consistently across my sources: reports, emails, meetings, and calls. I also compared several infographic templates, paying attention to structure, spacing, and how easy it was for a viewer to follow the information. A major strategy was simplifying the wording. I rewrote technical descriptions into short, clear explanations that anyone could understand, even someone who doesn't know anything about actuarial science. I then tested different layouts and color palettes until the infographic felt professional, balanced, and readable. I focused on highlighting the most relevant communication genres used in the actuarial field. I started by organizing the data and placing the corresponding graphs along the sides to create a visually balanced layout. I also moved elements around to allow for more space, making the information easier to read and follow. Each section clearly describes a specific communication method used by actuaries, and I added icons and visuals to simplify more complex concepts. Finally, I experimented with different color palettes to ensure the infographic looks professional while keeping it engaging for the audience. The development of my infographic went through a few different versions, each one improving on the last in layout, clarity, and overall look. The first version, on the left, was very experimental. Sections felt crowded, icons were unbalanced, the styling was inconsistent, and the colors weren't quite polished enough to feel professional. The middle version made noticeable improvements. Graphs were better placed, section dividers were cleaner, and the text was tightened so each communication method had its own space. I also introduced a more cohesive color palette and refined the titles to make them easier to scan. There were still some minor spacing and color issues, but it was much more closer to my final version. The final version on the right shows all these changes brought together. The spacing is more consistent, alignments are corrected, the color palette is brighter and uniform. Typography is easier to read, and the icons and graphs fit better into the overall design. This version is cleaner, more professional, and easier to navigate, showing a better understanding of visual communication, something especially important for actuaries. Here is my final result. The infographic shows that actuaries spend 63% of their communication time on written tasks. The bar graph displays estimated weekly hours: 14 hours on writing reports, 11 hours answering emails, 9 hours in meetings, and 6 hours in calls. Each genre has its own description box, making the layout intuitive. I also included the statistic that 8 out of 10 actuaries prefer digital over in-person communication, which reflects current workplace trends. My goal was to give viewers an immediate understanding of how actuaries communicate simply by looking at the visuals. The pie chart visually compares the proportion of time spent on each genre. The bar graph gives a numerical breakdown to support the written test statistic, and the icon figure chart shows the contrast between digital and in-person preferences. Using multiple visuals helped me make the information more engaging and easier to interpret. From this project, I learned that actuaries spend a significant amount of time explaining, clarifying, and documenting their work. Clear communication prevents misinterpretation, especially when dealing with complex analysis. I also learned that different audiences, such as clients, executives, or team members, require different formats. And finally, communication supports collaboration, accuracy, and decision making, proving that it is just as essential as technical skill. In conclusion, this project helped me understand the communication expectations of my future career in a much deeper way. I realized that actuaries aren't just analysts. They're communicators who just turn technical data into clear and actionable information. Creating the infographic helped me practice simplifying complex ideas and presenting them visually, which are skills I'll need in the field. Overall, this project strengthened my understanding of professional communication and prepared me to continue developing these skills as I move forward in my actuarial studies. Thank you for listening.